Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
And today we've got what kind of a fascinating look, I guess, at something that's becoming more and more prevalent in our lives.
Yeah.
We're always hearing about the amazing things AI can do,
Right.
but we're going to be kind of flipping the script a little bit and
Yeah.
exploring the often unseen human side of this technology, the people working behind the scenes to make all that AI magic happen.
The hidden figures of AI.
That's a good way to put it. The hidden
Yeah.
figures of AI
Yeah.
and the challenges they face. So,
It's interesting how we often think of AI as this
yeah.
disembodied force, like
Yeah.
it exists independently of human input, but in reality, there's a whole workforce of people, data annotators, who are essentially teaching AI how to understand and interact with the world.
Data annotators.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to admit that's not a term I hear every day. What exactly does a data annotator do?
Most people don't realize the extent of human involvement in AI development.
I'm one of them, clearly.
Data annotation is the process of labeling and categorizing data so that AI systems can learn from it.
Okay.
It's like showing a child a picture of a cat and saying, "This is a cat," over and over again. Except in this case, the child is a sophisticated algorithm.
Right.
And the lessons can involve some pretty intense material.
Okay, so starting to get the picture here.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing from the sources you've pulled for this deep dive
Yes.
that it's not always cute cat pictures that these annotators are dealing with.
You guessed it. We're going to be diving into some pretty disturbing stuff today.
Okay.
The sources reveal that many data annotators are exposed to violent images, graphic videos, even content related to things like cannibalism and mutilation as part of their work.
Wow.
And this raises some serious questions about the potential psychological toll of this kind of exposure.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about something else. The sources make it clear that a lot of this data annotation work is happening in Kenya.
Right.
Why is that?
That's a key part of this deep dive. It's not a coincidence that much of this work is outsourced to countries like Kenya. Labor costs in these countries are significantly lower
Oh.
than in places like the US or Europe.
Yeah.
We're talking about workers earning less than $2 an hour for tasks that might command $20 or more an hour in developed countries.
So essentially, it's about exploiting cheaper labor to fuel the AI boom.
It makes you wonder what the long-term consequences of this will be, both for the workers and for the development of AI itself.
Yeah, for sure. Before we go any further, maybe we can take a step back and break down exactly what this data annotation work entails. Can you give our listener a clearer sense of what these workers are actually doing day to day?
Imagine you're trying to teach an AI system to recognize different types of vehicles. Data annotators might be tasked with meticulously outlining every car, truck, and motorcycle in a given image, labeling each one with the correct category.
Wow.
Or if you're teaching an AI to understand human emotions, annotators might have to read through thousands of text messages and classify each one as happy, sad, angry, or sarcastic.
Wow. I never realized how much detail goes into it.
Right.
It's not just clicking buttons. It's actually very intricate work.
Right.
And I'm assuming it requires a certain level of skill and training.
Absolutely. It demands focus, attention to detail, and the ability to follow complex guidelines. And that's not even touching on the emotional resilience required to handle the often disturbing content they're exposed to.
That's what I want to delve into next.
Yep.
The human cost of this work.
Yeah.
The sources paint a pretty stark picture of the challenges these annotators face.
Yeah.
Let's start with Joan Kinua, a single mother in Nairobi, whose story really brings this issue to life.
Okay, Joan's story illustrates a common trajectory for data annotators.
Okay.
She started out with seemingly harmless tasks,
Okay.
like identifying images of plants and animals.
Right.
But as her work progressed, she was increasingly exposed to violent and graphic content, which began to take a toll on her mental health.
The sources describe her working incredibly long hours, sometimes up to 18 a day, even while pregnant,
Oh.
just to make ends meet.
Right.
And she reported experiencing anxiety nightmares and
Ah.
symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the content she was forced to view.
It's tough.
It's heartbreaking, and it makes you realize the real human cost of this technology we often take for granted.
It's a stark reminder that AI isn't just lines of code and algorithms.
Right.
There are real people
Yeah.
with real lives, emotions behind it.
Absolutely. And Joan's story isn't unique. Another data annotator from Kenya, Stacy, worked on content moderation for TikTok.
TikTok.
Her job involved reviewing hundreds of videos every hour,
Oh my goodness.
many of them incredibly graphic.
It's difficult to even fathom the sheer volume of content these workers have to sift through.
Right.
Imagine watching video after video of violence, abuse, and other disturbing material for hours on end.
One specific video Stacy described reviewing involved a mother killing her child.
Oh, gosh.
And she described the lasting trauma of witnessing such an event and how it haunted her long after her shift was over.
These workers are essentially on the front lines of the internet, filtering out the most toxic and disturbing content so the rest of us don't have to see it. But who is looking out for them?
Right.
Who is protecting them from the psychological impact of this exposure?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's one we'll be exploring further as we continue our deep dive. But before we move on, I think it's important to acknowledge that Joan and Stacy are just two examples among thousands.
Right.
There's a whole hidden workforce of data annotators, largely in the Global South, who are doing this essential but often invisible work.
And as we've already touched upon, the reason for this concentration of workers in countries like Kenya is primarily economic pawns. Companies can pay these workers a fraction of what they would have to pay workers in developed countries.
So it's about maximizing profits,
Right.
even if it means exploiting a vulnerable workforce.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see why this is such a complex and ethically charged issue.
It's a web of interconnected issues that we can't afford to ignore. And as AI continues to advance, the demand for data annotation will only grow, which means the stakes are higher than ever.
Well, we've laid out the groundwork now.
Right.
We know what data annotation is.
Yeah.
We've met some of the people doing this work.
Right.
And we've begun to understand the challenging conditions they face.
And as we delve deeper, we'll be exploring the ethical dilemmas, the mental health implications, and the potential solutions to this often overlooked aspect of the AI revolution.
So buckle up because we're about to go even further down the rabbit hole.
Let's do it.
I'm ready if you are.
I am. It's unsettling to consider that the very foundation of these technologies we rely on so heavily is built upon the sacrifices of individuals facing these kinds of challenges.
It's almost like we've become so enamored with the possibilities of AI that we've overlooked the human cost.
And that's precisely why it's so important to have these conversations. We can't just blindly celebrate AI advancements without acknowledging the human labor and the potential exploitation involved.
We've been focusing on the experiences of data annotators in Kenya, but I'm guessing this is a global issue.
Absolutely. It's happening all over the world, wherever there are cheaper labor pools to be tapped. The sources indicate that similar practices are occurring in countries like India, the Philippines, and Venezuela.
So this isn't just about Kenya, it's about a systemic problem within the tech industry.
Exactly. And as the demand for AI continues to grow, this problem is likely to become even more widespread.
We've talked about the psychological toll this work can take on the annotators themselves. But are there any broader implications? Does the fact that these workers are exposed to such disturbing content have any impact on the AI systems they're helping to create?
That's a great question, and one that researchers are starting to grapple with. There's a growing concern that the data used to train AI systems could be influencing those systems in ways we don't fully understand.
So if the data itself is skewed or biased, could that create problems down the line?
It's definitely a possibility. Let's say you're training an AI system to detect hate speech. If the data used to train that system is primarily labeled by people from a specific cultural background, it might not be able to accurately identify hate speech that uses slang or idioms from other cultures.
That makes sense. It's like teaching someone a language, but only exposing them to a limited vocabulary.
Exactly. And this issue goes beyond just language. If the data annotators themselves are experiencing emotional distress or trauma as a result of their work, could that somehow be embedded in the AI systems they're creating?
That's a chilling thought. It's almost like we're passing our own anxieties and fears onto these machines.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but it highlights the importance of considering the human element in AI development.
Okay, so we've laid out the problems. Now let's talk solutions. Is there anything that can be done to improve the working conditions for data annotators and address some of these ethical concerns?
There's no single magic bullet, but there are a number of things that could be done. One important step would be to increase transparency within the industry.
What do you mean by transparency?
Right now, there's very little information available about the working conditions of data annotators. Companies are often reluctant to disclose details about their practices. More transparency would allow consumers to make informed choices about the products and services they use, and it would put pressure on companies to improve their standards.
So shining a light on these practices could force companies to be more accountable.
Precisely. Another crucial step would be to advocate for fair wages and benefits for data annotators.
I think most people would agree that workers deserve to be paid a living wage for their labor, especially when that labor involves such challenging content.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the hourly rate, it's also about providing access to healthcare, mental health support, and other benefits that can help mitigate the impact of this work.
We've also talked about the potential for AI systems to be influenced by the data they're trained on. Is there anything that could be done to address that issue?
One promising approach is to diversify the pool of data annotators. By including people from a wider range of backgrounds and experiences, we can help ensure that the data used to train AI systems is more representative of the real world.
That sounds like a good starting point, but it feels like we're just scratching the surface here. This
Yeah.
is such a complex issue with so many different facets.
You're right, it's a multifaceted problem that will require a multi-pronged approach. But the first step, as we've been discussing, is awareness.
The more people who understand the hidden human cost of AI, the more likely we are to find solutions.
And it's not just about consumers demanding better from companies. It's also about researchers, policymakers, and tech companies themselves taking responsibility for creating a more ethical and sustainable AI ecosystem.
It's a collective effort. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI.
And I'm glad we're having this conversation because these are issues that need to be brought out of the shadows and into the light.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but I think our listener might be feeling a little overwhelmed right now. It can be disheartening to learn about the exploitation and the potential negative consequences of a technology that's often touted as a force for good.
I understand that feeling. It's easy to feel powerless in the face of such complex challenges. But I think it's important to remember that we're not passive bystanders in this story. We have the power to make choices, to demand better, and to use our voices to advocate for change.
So what can our listener do to make a difference?
There are a number of things. As we discussed earlier, supporting organizations that are working to improve the conditions for data annotators is a great place to start. There are groups that are advocating for fair wages, better mental health support, and more transparency within the industry.
So putting our money where our morals are.
Exactly. Another important step is to be a more conscious consumer. When you're using AI-powered products or services, do a little research. Find out which companies are committed to ethical sourcing and fair labor practices.
So voting with our wallets, essentially.
Yes, and don't underestimate the power of conversation. Talk to your friends, your family, your colleagues about this issue. The more people who are aware of the hidden human cost of AI, the more pressure we can put on the industry to change.
It's about raising awareness, spreading the word, and making it clear that we won't tolerate exploitation in the name of technological progress.
Exactly. And remember, even small actions can make a difference. By making informed choices, having these conversations, and supporting organizations that are fighting for change, we can all contribute to building a more ethical and sustainable AI future.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for our final thought for our listener, something to really chew on as they continue to navigate the complexities of AI in their own lives. So we've talked about data annotators, the unseen workforce powering our AI experiences. But what if we flip the script a little bit? What if you, the listener, had to spend a day in their shoes?
That's a really interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, imagine sitting down at your computer and instead of checking emails or, scrolling through social media,
Yeah.
you're faced with a screen full of images or videos that you have to categorize.
Yeah.
Some might be mundane, but others could be, deeply disturbing.
It would certainly challenge our perceptions, wouldn't it? To actually confront the reality of what these workers experience on a daily basis, the sheer volume of content that they process and the emotional toll it can take.
We click like on a post, we ask chatbot a question, we use a filter on a photo, and we rarely stop to think about the human labor that made those actions possible.
Right. It's so easy to get caught up in the convenience and the novelty of AI that we forget about the individuals on the other side of the screen, the ones who are making it all work.
So this final thought, it's about bringing that human element to the forefront. It's about encouraging our listener to pause, to reflect, and to consider the unseen hands shaping their digital world.
It's a call to action to move beyond passive consumption and to engage with AI in a more thoughtful and informed way.
We've explored the hidden human cost of AI, the challenges faced by data annotators, and the ethical questions that this work raises. But this isn't just about problems.
Right.
It's also about solutions.
Absolutely. We can make a difference by supporting organizations that are advocating for fair labor practices by being conscious consumers and by engaging in conversations about these issues.
We can demand transparency from companies developing AI technologies and hold them accountable for the well-being of their workforce.
The future of AI depends on us recognizing the value of human labor and ensuring that those who contribute to its development are treated with dignity and respect.
So as you go about your day, interacting with AI in all its forms, remember the human stories behind the algorithms.
Remember the data annotators.
That's it for our deep dive this week. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring.